So welcome to the AAPT Coffee Hour, and it's great to see everyone once again and to see new faces, which is what partially this tonight's event is about, is trying to bring new people in, but also seeing some consistent faces that have been here with us for lots of weeks, and it's great to see them again. So with that, I will turn it over to our hosts, Janice, Jeff, and Brian.
Hello, everybody. I guess tonight's topic is things that are going to be, or things that schools are doing in order to reopen and the ways that they're going to be reopening. So I can tell you a little bit about what we're doing. Our school pushed the school year from August to September 7th. And we've split the school year into actually 6 modules. Okay? And so each module runs for 6 weeks, then we have a week break in between. The idea was that's a transition piece since we're virtual now, to transition kids into an on-campus environment. We have a week to prepare in between each, and those would be our set cutoff points over the course of the year. We are a boarding school though, so we do board 200 students, and then we have 200-day students as well. So that's kind of the gist of what we're doing.
So at the elementary level, much like actually at the secondary level, in many districts in our area, we're trying to replicate a schedule in remote learning that is similar to a brick and mortar. Not saying it's right, wrong, or otherwise, but that is the intention in order to have students learn. It's a bit of a modified day. We're going about 8:22 to 1:45, keeping a regular break and lunch in between, trying to accommodate families in that process, and provide learning typically Monday through Thursday with an even more modified on Friday. And, you know, we really did a lot of stakeholder surveying to find out what our families' needs were, so that we could take the directive from the governor and then put into place some of the things that our community felt was going to work. We, as a district, are offering a virtual academy, and our homeschool programs have grown. But our attendance is pretty steady. And in the last couple of days, as we've done device distribution, we saw a lot of families come and who are, you know, incredibly positive about where we're at. I think now that they are starting to know a little bit more about the day and the schedule, and you know, more things become known, I think that reduces a little bit of the anxiety going into our school year. We begin on September 1st, which is a week from today.
And then for the rest of the high school level, I actually teach adult transition. I teach special education. So I have students that graduated with their certificate of achievement, and we can keep them till you turn 22, but we're on a high school campus. So as far as our district, what we're doing is we set up a distance learning and hybrid model that are the same, so that if and when we do make that change where we can be on campus, the schedule won't change, and we can actually make that change a little bit faster, I think. So the way we have it set up right now is we are in class. We're doing synchronous learning Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So basically as if they were on the high school campus taking their classes. And then the class is shortened up to about 50 minutes. They were 55. Our school day used to be 8 to 2:30. Now it's 8 to 2 for this. Well, I think we still have a 0 period 2 before that. But basically we're doing those 4 days. Then on a day like tomorrow is going to be more of a independent study day where we would email assignments or check in. I know with mine for special education, we're actually doing our speech session tomorrow for 45 minutes, and then I'm going to give them some things to work on their own. But then when we go to hybrid, because Southern California, Orange County is now off the watch list. So if we can go for 2 weeks, we could go into the hybrid situation. Our schedule will be the same thing. The only difference being half the students would go Monday, Thursday, and the other half would go Tuesday, Friday. Wednesday is still the independent day. And also with teachers have the option of being on campus right now. And then later when the students are there, Wednesday is also a cleaning and sanitizing day. So we go 2 days, everything's cleaned up really good, and then 2 more days. So never more than 2 days with people on campus for any large amount. anyway, then so for the hybrid, we go 2 and 2, and then, hopefully at some point we'll get back to being there 5 days a week. So, but the one thing with special ed is for us with our students, especially mod severe, when we do go to the hybrid, our students will be able to go all 4 days. They'll go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, because they really do need more, it's more of an at-risk population. They do need more contact with staff. It's very difficult. Not that it's easy for anybody else to do their virtual learning, but it's especially difficult when you have students that can't read or write or have any other disabilities that's barriers. So anyway, that's what we're doing. But I think we have a good plan in place.
So some people submitted questions ahead of time, and kind of wrapping up a lot of those was really about what's a good first day activity or first week activity. And I know at this point now, some of us have already started back. We've had students for weeks. Some of us this is looming out in a week or two. So we're in a good state, I think, where people can kind of share what they've tried and what's worked well, and suggestions for others. So who had a successful first day activity?
I don't know if it's so much a first day activity, but I know for us it was interesting with my students. After our first day, I asked them, I go, what do you like best and what do you like least about distance learning? And to a person, and these are kids with more significant disabilities, it's kind of a wide range, but pretty much all of them said just seeing their friends and being able to talk to their friends and interact. And I'll bet that's probably true of most kids, regardless of whether they're gifted, special needs, or everything in between. So I've actually tried to adjust here going into week 2 of doing more social type activities where they can interact and talk and see each other and do things together on an educational level. I don't know how helpful that is, but I mean, I know from that standpoint, it's kind of helped guide me of what I've been adjusting to. I think I was trying to do too much academic work and not giving them enough time just to replicate what they've been missing since March, which is just seeing their friends. So.
Gary? There you go.
Hi there. One that I've done in the past many years is you got the big school, it's a big irregular shape. How many rain barrels does it take to collect 1 inch of rain on the outside, on the roof? Where they get to go outside, try to measure it. Some use Google, some use whatever, and there's a lot of unit conversions. They're outside running around for an hour or more having fun, and then you got time, and then you can sit the picnic tables outside and actually work on it the next day. And so getting them outside and keeping them outside, especially I think now, is going to be a good thing with that.
You said what size rain barrel is this?
They get to choose. For some reason, they always choose whiskey barrels, but like I said, standard oil barrel works just as fine, but they got to come up with their assumptions and what they want to use. That's part of the game, is make your own assumptions and use them.
I see. Anyone assume that the wood in the whiskey barrel sucks up any of the water?
Not usually. It's come up once in a while, but they can usually argue their way out of it. But just getting them outside for a day or two and then doing all the work at the picnic tables outside is really nice.
Yes, the devil's cut, as someone mentioned in the chat. Yes, David.
So Gary,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Janice.
oh, it's just a follow-up question for Gary. So are we, you have students back on campus? Is that what I get from your model?
Oh.
Muted.
You're muted, Gary. Sorry.
Yep. Oh, there it is. All right. It'll be we'll have 2 weeks. We got a week this week and a week next week, and then they'll be able to start. So.
Thank you.
Where are you, Gary?
Central Wisconsin, Stevens Point.
Okay. I'm in my 4th week of teaching right now, and I do not only local, but we also have a group of international Chinese students that we're also doing remote learning on their time frame. So I have to leave a little early because I start my AP Physics 1 class for my international cohort at 5 p.m., 8 a.m. their time. So what did we do on our first day? Well, I took a picture or a page from my previous life workbook when I was working for 13 years as a manufacturing supervisor before becoming a teacher. And I had them all do an elevator speech. So I got into gizmos. No, not gizmos. I got into Flipgrid. And in my Flipgrid, I set up a class where so that they could see each other. I gave them 90 seconds to be able to say, what do you want me to know about you? What do you want to know about physics? And what's something special about you that you can relate to physics, so that I can now put real world examples to help you better understand what's going on, so that I can relate it to you. I mean, it's the same thing I would do in my first day of class, is let me know a little bit about yourself. So why not do it in a video status, especially since in Flipgrid, they can all watch each other's. And I have people that are like up to 80 views on various other things. So it's a good way to, and then I can go through and at my leisure, go back and say, okay, who likes soccer, who likes football, who likes this, who likes that, you know, who's learning to drive. And that way I can tailor my examples to their specific interests.
It's really great, David. I love the fact that you're, connecting right out of the chute, finding out what is relevant and interesting to them. I think that's what we keep hearing over and over, is that the connection piece and relational piece is super important, especially in this virtual time when we don't have that face-to-face opportunity. So I really like that. And I think the Flipgrid is really brought out the voices of many students. I don't know if those of you have used Flipgrid. It's brought about the voices of students who have otherwise oftentimes been quiet. And they like that forum because it's a little less scary when they're recording by themselves than when they're speaking in front of a class.
I see there were a couple of questions. As far as I know, since you have to log in to a specific class, it's similar to what we have for Edmodo, so I do believe it is relatively safe. I am in a private school, so I don't have to deal with the politics of public situations. And we're using it throughout, at least throughout the Archdiocese here in Los Angeles, is one of the things that they're recommending for, especially for like projects and things along those lines. So yeah, it actually worked pretty well to help me get to know them, as well as for them to get to know me, because I had to do one as well.
Yes, like you, David, I will be teaching Sunday nights for my international students. I got Turkey, Chile, Indonesia, and China under my hat. So I'll be teaching 7:15 to 10 o'clock at night on Sundays to hit our international population. But, that connection piece is really important, and especially for some of us who have kids coming in our class that we've never met before. I think what David said was really important, that he did his own, because they have to connect with you too. And that's part of student engagement. If you're in, it's harder when you're just a face behind a screen. And so they need to learn a little bit more about you in a slightly different way, because they're not in the classroom and you're not having these passing conversations with them. You need to kind of create that environment. One of the things we've planned to do is every time you have class, you let in 2 kids from the waiting room first, like 5-6 minutes early, and you have individual contacts with them. You choose 2 kids this time. You choose this time. You just like, hey, how you doing? What's your, just to get a little bit more out of them, to create that couple minute passing that you had when kids come into the classroom, and you can talk with them a little bit before class starts. Try to recreate some of that to build a little more camaraderie and relationship between teacher and student.
I have a question for the group. What do many of you feel would be helpful from your site administrator at this time, as you're transitioning into a new school year, things are changing? What are some of the things that you would find supportive
So, I'll say one thing. In some interactions I've had with other teachers and administrators, I think one thing that's often helpful is that teachers often, and rightfully, look to administrators for definitive answers on things.
Mhm.
They want to be told, this is how it's going to be, do these things and you'll be okay. And I think problem is no one actually knows if that's true anymore, right? And I think everybody, from administrators to teachers to superintendents to university faculty and presidents, need to be more honest and say, yeah, we're going to try this week, and next week it could be different, and we're going to do our best.
That's right. It's okay to say I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay to say
I'll try and find out. That's right. That's right. Can we get Mark, can we get an idea of how many started remote and maybe how many folks are actually in person with kids?
Sure.
But some of us haven't started at all.
Okay.
So you could say whether you are going to be hybrid or going to be online to give us an idea.
What would you like us to do? Raise our hand?
Just throw it in the chat.
So there's an interesting question from Rebecca saying that they're simulcasting for students who are not in the classroom. I think this is an interesting thing. What platform are you using for that? Are you streaming video, and is your school network actually able to handle that traffic? Because I wonder about schools that think about, oh yeah, we're just going to stream everything, it'll be easy, and no one actually thinks about, oh yeah, our Wi-Fi is terrible.
So yeah, we had to do a bunch of testing and I don't know, plugging things in, and we took away all the desktops and got laptops and second monitors, and it was quite expensive and exciting. But we ended up having a week of, instead of one day of orientation for the students, we had a week. And we would have half the freshmen come in on Monday morning and half the freshmen on Monday afternoon. And then, and then we have a bunch of our students who have chosen to go e-learner, like full virtual. And they all came on Friday. So we had a lot of time where all the teachers in the class, and we could just try it out. And I was like, okay, everybody get on, everyone do a recording right now, Google Meet.
Yeah.
And people can be a little pixelated, but it's worked. Day 2. Mostly it's me and IT running around trying to get everybody's speakers working with their video. It's exciting, sort of.
I'm in a similar situation. We started last Wednesday. I'm teaching in Houston, Texas, and all students started virtual. And I'm at the high school level, and every class is Zooming every period. And we teach for 10-20 minutes and then give them their assignment. We also record the Zoom because some students who are asynchronous or unable to be there can get that content. On September 8th, we are going to give them the option again of in-person or virtual, and about 50% of my district chose virtual and 50% will be in person. And so the expectation is that we continue to Zoom with the virtual kids, and we have the in-person kids kind of behind them or there as well at the same time. So we're excited to see what that looks like. But our district was able to support every single teacher Zooming in the building for the last week. So that was exciting. But in regards to supports that I would like, I know that there are no definitive answers, but the most frustrating part about this week is when you get directives from two different departments that are opposite. So you have to choose if you're going to listen to the IT directive or if you're going to listen to your principal's directive. And so that's, I mean, that particular example I'm saying right now is where to post your Zoom link and how often to change it. So our IT district department has a certain recommendation. Actually, they call it a mandate. And then my principal also has instructions that are opposite. So it's frustrating.
No offense to IT people, but I always defer to the person who can fire me.
Or simply suggest that they might need to talk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that happening right now as everybody's flying by the seat of our pants, and it's okay to ask questions. I hope that you're in environments where people are, you know, okay with those questions coming at them. You know, which way would you like me to do this? Here's what we're hearing. And Katie, I wanted to say I really appreciated what you said about the 20 minutes of, I would say, synchronous direct instruction with maybe perhaps what would be a gradual release of, you know, towards some independent thinking and application. I think, I don't know about many of you, but I don't think many of us can spend all day staring at a screen and focusing on any one, you know, person. So I'm really glad to see that. Is that something you feel that is going to continue to work?
The challenge that we're going to have in our district in particular, I work for a very large district, is that we handed out nearly all of our technology for kids that chose the virtual route. So we will not have the technology for the kids that come back in person. So it will be very difficult to give that, because our platform is Canvas. Mm-hmm. It will be really hard to give that assignment, which needs to be completed on Canvas, to our in-person kids because they won't have the technology. But we also have the obstacles right now of, they've told us not to use paper, not to hand out paper, not to collect paper. And they've really discouraged us from using equipment because of the guidelines in sanitizing in between and the wait time after you sanitize. So we're really fearful, I guess is the right word, as to when these kids come back in person, what can we even do with them?
Wow. That sounds like a planning piece that needs to be considered for sure.
I have a question for the group, and as you're looking at your schedules, does anybody have teaching blocks set up that are longer than 50 minutes?
A few.
Okay, a few. Because when I'm at my new school this year, last year when we went virtual, what they did with the schedule is they gave teachers a 3-hour block of time to hold their class and didn't really give a whole lot of instruction around that. And there were some teachers who had their students in Zoom for 90 to 150 minutes. And I went off the deep end as the director of technology and innovation. And I was just like, why? No kid needs to sit with you for, 3 hours. And these are people who are doing like direct instruction. They're like lecturing to them for 3 hours and they're supposed to be taking notes. And so we've seen a lot of that happening. So I'm hoping people like what Katie has with some type of gradual release, that there are break times in there and that people aren't holding their students for, 2 hours sitting there staring at a screen just for you.
We actually have a memo of understanding that the association worked out with the district, that elementary teachers are keeping kids in synchronous learning for no more than bursts of 10 to 15 minutes, and secondary students for 20 to 25. And that was an approach that they wanted to ensure to the community, that the kids wouldn't be staring at a screen all day. So it's curious. It's really amazing to me how many, you know, differentiated ways there are to go about this. But I think that comes back to just good practice. And I would encourage all of you to trust your gut on that, even when you're in situations when there are, you know, a lot of different things, like Katie said, coming at you. You know, look at what you would do in a classroom setting too, right? So it's important to think about that.
You can look at it from the point of view of if you're sitting there for an hour and you're really starting to get antsy sitting there, imagine what the students are feeling.
But I have a cross problem with that, especially teaching AP Physics. How can I cover all the requirements within the units and keep it down to 20 minutes, especially since I'm currently meeting in hour and 15-minute blocks twice a week or every other day. And so it gets, the actual number of physical in-class minutes is small to start off with, but how do I cover all the requirements and cover it in sufficient quantity to provide adequate feedback for quality of assessment and not have that additional time available to do that? Between that and figuring out how do I satisfy the 25% lab time for the AP, for the College Board, those are my two biggest things that I'm trying to deal with while being remote.
Martha, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm also teaching AP Physics C. I'm trying to get through mechanics first semester and E&M second semester, and I used to have 300 minutes of class time, and now I have 100 minutes of class time via Zoom. And so I've given up lecturing. I think there's a whole series of videos, and I can, when I'm not talking, I can put the link in the chat that, you know, just goes through the whole thing. I think the kids can watch those videos. I don't think I want to give them the same set of videos the entire time. So I'll vary between true physics and flipping physics and the Lassevier physics videos and have them watch on their own. And I sort of am going to try to hold to the, while we're together, we should be interacting. And so last Friday, I picked the hardest, or one of the hardest kinematics problems I could find that sort of requires a graphical solution. And I gave it to them for 15 minutes in breakout rooms of 3 to 4, and they worked on that together. And then we came back and we finished it. And it had a lot of the elements of a kinematic. So I'm not doing a lot of kinematics problems. I'm picking the most challenging ones. And then today we did the same thing. I gave them a what if anything is wrong task to review graphs for, 2 minutes on your own, 2 minutes with the partner, and then we went over it. And then I gave them a breakout room with a ball is thrown down and a ball is thrown up, and where do they meet? And I gave them that for 15 minutes in breakout rooms. And so again, a super challenging free fall problem, not a one step, not a one object, but a super challenging free fall problem. And so that's how I've been sort of handling it, but I don't think I want to lecture for the real reason that, like, some of the kids can't be there. But if I assign them videos that are already there and already made, I don't have to make them, and they can watch them as many times as they want at their own pace when it's convenient for them.
I agree. I actually have set up with a flipped classroom. So yes, I have Ed Puzzle is my go-to thing, which by the way can be seen in China and without the VPN. It is not a Google base, so you can do, if you record your meetings on Zoom or your classes on Zoom, you can upload them to Ed Puzzle for everybody to watch later, and then you can track who needs to watch it. But I do a flipped classroom with Ed Puzzle reading, so that my time that I'm spending is in application and verification. But even so, yeah, I'm about down to the same 100 minutes for AP Physics 1. But you got to realize that even though I'm algebra based, I have generally some issues with levels of math competency before they come into my class, as opposed to being already in calculus or whatever else for AP Physics C, which I used to teach. So I understand both sides of that.
Martha, what is the quality of the conversations that you hear the students having when you enter into a breakout room, and what's your role in that capacity that you find as being helpful to them?
Of course, the quality varies from student to student, and it's sort of the same as what you would find if you were sitting in person. Some groups are stuck. Some groups, all of them have their video off and they're quiet. And I just say, hey, did I just come in at a quiet minute? Or, you know, I think we're still all getting used to this. And some of them I come in and they're talking to each other. And, you know, it's hard to tell when you've got a 15-minute and you've got 4 breakout rooms to get to. I have very small classes this year, so I'm blessed. So, you know, I've got to go to 4 or 5 different rooms and hear from them. So I'm only in there, you know, and then I ask them questions. What did you do? What have you started? Okay, so equations didn't work. What else could you do? You know, or, you know, sometimes if that hint isn't enough, I'll say, well, I got 2 words for you before I leave, velocity graph. And then, you know, I go and they try velocity graph, and, you know, they eventually figure out that they need the area and the 2 different sections, the constant acceleration and the constant velocity part have to add up to a certain number. So, and with some kids I go in, how you doing? Oh, great. We're doing a velocity graph. I think this is how you're going to do it. And, you know, so it just, you know, just like in person, it varies from group to group as to who's in the group. And I'm still trying, it's harder because I only have 50 minutes with them twice a week to figure out who really knows what they're doing and who's really struggling. You know, I probably would have figured that out by now if we were in person and, you know, been able to see them every single day. But, what I want to know is how are people going to look over the kid's shoulder and see what they're doing and say, no, 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 you've got to have this negative and this positive, or what, like, I don't know how to help them that way. Like, I think that's what the critical piece. I don't know how I'm going to do that, is see what they're actually doing and help them individually.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. What I did last year at the end of the year, I actually had them do Flipgrid, and their Flipgrid was them working through a problem. So I can actually see their thought processes and see where they might be making a mistake. And then I could go back and be like, oh, hey, this is what you're missing. Because that's what we usually get when we have kids working through problems. You can see their thought process, be like, oh, this is the deficit that you have in understanding this. This is how I fix it. So if you can train your kids to actually Flipgrid that problem, so they just set up their phone or whatever over their piece of paper, and they work the problem out, then I can watch the, you know, kind of real time them working through, like, oh, hey, now I can help you. And then it really comes out the kid who's doing it and has no idea, and you have, you know, 5 minutes of blank paper. You know, that's a kid you really need to reach out to and have a conversation. So that's kind of one way you can see the process of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious if anyone else has experimented with giving kind of formal assessments where students produce videos explaining questions rather than, you know, the typical paper and pencil, write an answer, send that back to me.
I haven't done that myself, but I know our foreign language department, that's the plan. All of their formative assessments will be oral and live. And since we have 6 or 7 foreign language teachers, they're actually going to be grouping together and doing assessments as a team. They're gonna have an assessment day, and they're gonna break up, and each of them are gonna watch kids go through that, and that's gonna be what their time's gonna be. And they're gonna help each other out. Okay, we're gonna do this day, and we're gonna do your class. We're gonna assess everybody. I don't know how that's gonna work exactly in terms of timing, but they're gonna do some formative assessments that way. But I think it could work for physics. It could work for a lot of subjects, depending upon how you structure it.
So I saw that David made a comment about it would take too long to watch all the videos, which is true. But I'm also curious, you know, how long does it take to grade a paper test? You know, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes, versus watching a 5-minute video. Like, is there some way to engineer it so that the total amount of teacher time is at least similar?
I will agree with that. If I was to take a look at watching a video of someone that's in the process before I go to a summative assessment, that would be one thing. I mean, I am grading and providing feedback on written assessments brought in and turned in through our system, which is Edmodo. and then I can answer for each question. This is where your problem was. This is where you do that, and I can type that in. But it takes me right now about twice as long to grade and input on Edmodo than it would be for me to have the paper in front of me to write the answer and then be able to return the paper. And if I can't do paper, and that's a thought I hadn't had before, is not being able to hand paper assignments when we get back together. So that's a whole nother thing I got to think about.
Yeah, I think assessment is going to be a big challenge, at least on the summative side, especially if you're teaching an AP course.
So I have a question about assessment too, which is one thing I've been kicking around, which is there a way to kind of lean into the assessment problem, which is to say, rather than worry about kids finding extra sources and things like that to help them, or looking things up online, what if we tried to encourage them to say, you know, okay, here's an assessment. The world is your oyster. Anything you can find online is great, as long as you cite it. Does that, I think that's a completely different way of looking at it, and I don't know if that gets to the idea of actually helping you understand what students know and don't know.
I just think that students would cite it, copy and paste the link into easybib.org and submit it and be done within 5 minutes and share the information amongst their friends within 4 seconds.
And learn nothing.
So, yeah, and they learn how to search something. So that I hear you, Mark. And when my school last year we were doing online assessments, it took me like 2 weeks to come up with questions that were nowhere on the internet. Gave it to them. They took a picture and sent it to me, and I did an Excel spreadsheet instead of writing it out with my multicolored pen on what points and they got offered to not get awarded. It worked pretty well. I think it took quicker to do it that way on Excel spreadsheet, which I am a huge fan of, than actually handwriting it out. So, food for thought.
Had a lot of issues of students working together in a not productive way in the spring when we were virtual, and sharing answers and solutions. And so we try to do formula questions in our assessments if we need to assess them on a certain process, so that every student gets a different number. And that at least allows them, when they're cheating, to share how you do number 2, and not just what the answer to number 2 is. And we've now shifted to all of the summative assessments being a unique product, like a performance task sort of thing, so that at least you know that they're putting the effort into the process of understanding that content and creating a product, rather than just looking up answers to questions. The first performance task we're doing is they're to design a marathon route in our town using Google Maps, and mark 5 points along that route so that they can calculate the distance, measure the displacement. Given the speed of a traditional marathon runner, a fast, medium, and slow runner, they can calculate where that runner would be after a certain amount of time, or how long it would take that runner to get to certain points. And then they can graph, assuming those runners are running at a constant speed, what their position versus time and velocity versus time graphs are. So we're hopeful that that will engage them a little bit, give them a little bit of ownership, and that it's not so copyable. We're doing it in a Google Drive assignment, a Google Cloud assignment, where we give them a template of some of the calculations we want to see, and they fill it in.
I did a couple of things last spring, not too much, but a couple. One, I did my AP Physics C class uses WebAssign, so I gave them WebAssign questions, and I gave them limited time, so they all have different numbers. And then I told them they also had, for several of them, I told them they had to write out their work and scan it and send it to me as well, so I could give them partial credit. And then for my regular physics class last year, I did we have a program called Mastery Manager, and I didn't worry too much about how great the assessments were because they could only make the grades go up, but I gave them 20 to 30 multiple choice questions, maybe I think it was 30 multiple choice questions in about 60 minutes, limited. They had to start between like a 2-hour range. They had to start it. Mastery Manager allowed me to scramble all the answers and scramble the questions. So even if, you know, like number 2 for me wasn't the same as number 2 for you, and even if it was, the answers were scrambled. The average on that test was about a 65%, which is consistent with what they do on the multiple choice tests when they're in person, closed notes, closed book, and not cheating. So I found that to be, you know, somewhat effective, but I wasn't too worried about assessments because their grades couldn't go down. So those are the 2 things I did. I'm thinking about the video idea for this year. Like maybe if I don't have every single kid make a video for every assessment, but maybe for one assessment per semester, you have to make a video. And you'll get assigned, you know, okay, so these 3 kids on the kinematics unit, these 3 kids on the momentum unit, and so on. So I'm not grading, you know, a bunch of videos every single time.
Cindy?
I did a couple things before all of this with self-grading, and some of you have heard about that, but thought I'd mention it again because I think there are some nice adaptations to deal with some of these issues. So I've done a couple things. One time for quantum mechanics, I had so many papers to grade and stuff like that. I randomly picked a problem. So they had to do the homework, but I randomly picked a problem and they had to do an oral with me on explaining the problem. So one way, especially with an AP physics class, is to sort of say, okay, I'm going to randomly pick, you know, student A on this day, I'm going to randomly pick a problem from this homework set that you had to do and just ask you to do it, you know, show me how to do it. That keeps them on their toes, and it definitely keeps them from copying from each other. The other thing is to have students grade their own assignments. So you give them a homework problem or a bunch of problems, you pick one and you say, here's the solution to problem 5, you know, or have them do it for all of them, but it's a lot. Here's problem 5, here's the solution, grade it. Find your mistakes, write, I did a great job, make comments, etc., and then have them send that back to you. So that's worked very, very well. And also as a pedagogical tool for the students, that self-grading process has been unbelievable. And I'm still trying to get a paper together on all of this, but I will be presenting at the virtual meeting about it. But the idea of them, and they can't consult or work with each other in little groups, right? If you're responsible for grading your own work based off a solution you've been given, what's the point of meeting with 4 or 5 other students in the class, right? So anyway, it's worked really well, and there's probably some modifications for people that might be helpful.
Yeah, in a previous coffee hour, a lot of people were really interested in hearing about your self-grading.
Yeah, and I followed up that coffee hour with a whole Zoom session with about 20 or 30 people from the original one who wanted to hear about it. And so, yeah, that went great. Maybe some of you were there. I can't quite remember.
Yeah, there's a good resource, and it's on Facebook. It's called the Teachers Throwing Out Grades, about a gradeless classroom, and a lot of that is self-reflective practices and those pieces. Mark Barnes runs it. He's out of Indiana, I believe. We were one of the founding members, and there's been probably a 12 books come out of this group based upon that, with Star Sackenstein, who's written a lot on self-assessment and no grades in the classroom. So I encourage you, if you want to go that route, that's a good paper way. If you're the person who needs to have the book in front of you to read about it, like some of us, some of those resources there might be helpful in looking at, you know, having students self-assess.
Hello.
I got here for about half of my coffee hour.
Well, welcome. So another topic that has been consistent throughout a lot of these is as many people did kind of end of course surveys last spring, there was a lot of feedback from their students about how the students missed interacting with other students, whether that was informally or formally. And I'm curious if anyone's considered this idea of how in the way that we structure our learning, we kind of continue to foster that that community of learners, of students working with other students. And I know we've talked about it in the sense of like 20-minute lecture, then send people to breakout rooms to work on things. But it seems like there should be a little bit more structure than I'll put you in a breakout room and you'll figure it out.
I think you can also do on certain platforms. I know in Moodle, like discussion forums. So that's another way I'm gonna kind of let them talk to each other. And I know every platform probably has that, but just sort of saying, oh, if you post some interesting thing you heard on the news involving physics, put it in the forum and then other people can comment on it. And you can sort of tell them that they'll get extra credit for either initiating a post or commenting on a post. I've had some luck with those kinds of things.
So
Hey,
those
Jeff,
of you,
you're muted.
Yep. Sorry, I didn't see.
That was a fantastic hot take that you guys just missed right there.
We'll think about
So-
it if we choose to. Yep, okay. Thank you. Yeah, have a great night. You too.
Yeah, so what I was saying was, when we do when I do our breakout rooms, I try to keep it to about 3-4 people if possible. I have a smaller class, of course, but that way you can hear each other much better. I noticed that with us with 15 to 20, you'd have a lot of outside noise of people talking over each other, so that helps. But I think just setting those up and then not putting myself in one of those and just kind of going from room to room and checking in to see how they're doing to still kind of facilitate what was going on and maybe kind of redirect if they were stuck or off task or what have you. I felt that helped out a lot. But definitely the smaller the groups that you can make, the better. I've found.
So for those of you that have started already, and how are students acting in seeing each other? Maybe they haven't been seeing each other for a while, or what do they seem to be hungry for?
The only people that I've met with are my students that I'm an advisor for, and they're hungry for connection. They're hungry for peer approval, for camaraderie, that all the things that they're not getting because they're stuck at home. And if there's any way that I can build in group stuff for kids, I think that's really important, where they have to collaborate, not only because it's just a great, wonderful science skill, but because they haven't had a lot of collaboration the past 6-8 months on just about anything, other than with probably their parents.
How many of you may have set up norms for that particular part of learning in terms of collaboration or culture, interaction? Is anybody setting that up for the first week or day, or did anyone engage in that conversation, or did you get student input in that regard?
I hadn't thought about it, and I haven't started yet, but I am definitely going to pull in that whole collaborative aspect in terms of how I set up my grading for what they're going to get credit for doing. It's going to be stressful. So thanks.
There's an entire section in the Distance Learning Playbook by Fisher, Fry, and Hattie. If you have the opportunity to get your hands on that, it's a really nice way to create the structure for collaboration in your classrooms, and letting students know that they're participants in that. And then I really like going back to what Cindy said about self-assessment, not only in content, but also in those skills, in those 21st century skills. I think that students need to be assessing that of each other and themselves as well. So you can come up with a rubric for that, and make that part of it. It's really hard. I think even we could agree that it's really hard to sit in a Zoom and wait for someone to talk. So I think there has to be an intentional, direct part of our setting up our classrooms that addresses that too.
Yeah, I agree. I think discussion norms, since you're going to be online, need to be an important part of what you set forth on the first day. If you're looking for a good discussion norm piece, you can always look at the guidelines for conduct during discussions from Step Up. That's an AAPT program. I'm going to put the poster up. You should be able to see it here.
Yep.
So you have sharing time equitably, valuing differences. The big NGSS standards, if you're going to argue from evidence. Got to have some data. Make sure everybody feels safe. Discomfort is okay. And then the important one, because kids can say a lot of things. They're in their own house. Own your impact. And I try to enforce this a lot. Your intentions may not be the same as your impact, and how we go through those things. And I think these are good discussion norms for pretty much any class, especially when you're going to be online and in groups, so that kids understand when they can talk, who's talking. That's a good way to structure things. If you want a copy of this poster, you can go to engage.aps.org, I believe, Mark, where they can get the poster in this.
Can you put that in the chat, the link in the chat?
Yeah, I'll put it in right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you're one of the lucky ones, there actually are physical posters that we mailed out to people. They may have randomly shown up in your box last year. I think we mailed 20,000 of those posters.
Yeah, I think so. Everybody who is a AAPT member that we could come up with, that was a physics teacher.
Yeah.
It's probably at school. I just haven't been there.
Yeah.
It's in your mailbox.
Yep.
With 20 Fisher Scientific catalogs.
Yes. And a Granger one.
One of the things that I've found helpful to establish the culture virtually is I start each day with a question of the day. And it's dumb stuff, but it does two things for me. It allows me to take attendance without having them wait for me. And it establishes a culture where they've already talked once or twice. They've already made a connection. So when it comes up to talk about content, we're already talking, you're more comfortable to say something. So it's sort of helped to springboard the conversation in my Zoom classes.
So I saw a comment in the chat about, I've heard of a lot of school districts that are trying to more explicitly define participation. Showing up to an online meeting, for example, garners points or value or something like that to entice students to show up in a face-to-face way. And I'm kind of curious to take a poll Is that a direction that a lot of school districts are going? Is that something that you are either being encouraged to or excited to incorporate somehow?
Okay, so I'm in New Hampshire and we have competency-based education, which means that we are no longer allowed to give any points for just participating or points for just, bonus points for anything. It's all based on the competencies that the students have to meet. So when the online learning began, it became an issue. Obviously, no one did anything with grades in the spring anyway, but come fall, I think that it's important for us to be able to maybe award those points for them being involved, turning on their cameras, being there. I think that they're going to come up with a bunch of rules and norms, the school is in general, of what the students have to do in order to, when we take attendance, they have to have their camera on, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's been an issue, because I think that sometimes students, especially the students that we teach, love those extra points, love those bonus points, love, they'll go the extra yard if they have to obtain those things. And we just aren't allowed to give those things to those students. So I'm struggling a little bit with that, and I'll figure that out come September 10th, I think.
Pauline, even in elementary school, we do strictly standards-based grading. So there aren't effort or participation points that can enter into a letter grade. So a lot of that has to come from becoming an intrinsic place. And then also, I think what helps with that is universal design, offering choice in terms of how one accesses the learning, how one, and this goes back to self-assessment and offering some autonomy in that. I think that, garnering ways where students feel comfortable entering into the learning, if we give some choice, I think we're finding choices helping out a lot now, more than ever in the virtual environment.
Yeah, we're standards based as well. Actually, at Webb's, the science department is the only department on campus that's actually standards based. So that causes problems for converting. But we also have what are called the Webb skill standards. And those Webb standards are in fact separate from their actual grade. And so these are the things about turning in work, attendance, behavior. Those are our Webb standards, and those are things that they're assessed on separately from what their actual, content, your mastery concept standards. And that's kind of a pull from the Master Transcript Consortium. I don't know if you've known about that. That's a group of private schools that have gotten together, and they're trying to change the way transcripts are done. And so that they're bottom up instead of top down. The college does not dictate what is important at the schools in terms of how grades are represented. You can look them up. I'll post them in the chat. They have a pretty good video. Yeah, that we're standards based as well, because the idea of showing up to Zoom affecting your grade destroys the idea that you've mastered any concept. Because I can just not do my homework, but I came to Zoom all the time, and now all of a sudden I have an A instead of the B+. But that doesn't mean I know any dang physics.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, but I'm hearing on the other side, I agree with all this, by the way, but I'm hearing stories from a lot of other physics teachers that are saying their districts are showing up as high as 20% of a grade.
Wow.
We were told that we cannot require them to turn on their video for Zoom for equity reasons. So
that would be consistent with what our practice is too, Martha.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I don't like teaching to letters. I like faces.
Well, it's, I know people that use Blackboard as a major tool. Blackboard Collaborate Ultra only displays 4 pictures. So students, if they turn their cameras on, they're immediately only one of 4 faces that is being displayed. And that's just too much upfrontness for a teenager, I think. So we're coming to the end of our hour, and I would be remiss in pointing out that one of the other themes of tonight was about bringing new people in and kind of showing off our vibrant discussion communities that we have here at AAPT, and trying to invite more people to join and to show this value of people coming together, teachers coming together, and having these real conversations about practice, about tools that are out there, about methods and approaches, and the value of this vibrant community that we have. And I think it's important to welcome all of you, some of the new faces that I see, and some of the people that have been returning all these weeks, to point out thank you for participating in this and being such strong members of the community. And from my position at AAPT, it really has been wonderful to see people come in and to interact in this way, and to show off what teaching is and the community of teaching is. So I welcome all of you, and hope you continue to reach out, and if you have people that you think would benefit from this conversation in this community, please invite them along, and to continue to reach out. So with that, I would say thank you to our 3 hosts. It's wonderful to have them here, and I appreciate their perspectives that they brought, as well as everyone else. So thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. Janice, Jeff, thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity. I wish everybody a good school year.
Yeah, stay safe.
Sweet.